Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 17th of January 2023, and these are the stories that we will be discussing in detail during the course of our show. We'll begin with the interview that our Premier Shehbaz Sharif Sahab gave to Al Arabiya recently, in which he talked about the relationship that Pakistan enjoys with the brotherly Gulf countries and also the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. He highlighted how those countries have been there for Pakistan in times of need, and also how he wants that relationship to be further developed into a strategic relationship, whether it be the United Arab Emirates and also the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This is what he highlighted. Also, there have been a lot of diplomatic successes as far as the current government is concerned, whether it be on the FATF front, whether it be COP27, whether it be the Geneva mood, or whether it be the improvement in relationship between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, China and Pakistan, as well as the UAE and Pakistan, the proof of which is the loans that have recently been given by all the three countries. This is going to be our first story. Our second segment today will also more or less be linked with the interview that our Premier gave to the Al Arabiya channel, but this time we'll be highlighting the relationship that Pakistan has with its neighbor India. How Shehbaz Sharif Saab wants to improve on that relationship, but on the condition that important and thorny topics between the two be discussed on the agenda. That includes the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir issue, and also that India reverses back its August 5, 2019 actions that it took against the people of the Indian held valley. Where could all of this lead to? Could there be a thaw in the relations between India and Pakistan? Could both countries come to talks? Because the Indian media has been highlighting this part of the interview of the Pakistani Premier on its different channels with their perspective, of course. Nevertheless, what does it bode as far as the relationship between these two countries and, of course, the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir issue is concerned, and the atrocities that the minorities are subjected to by the BJP government? This is going to be our second story. Then we will be talking about a high-level Russian delegation, ladies and gentlemen, that is headed by the country's Minister for Energy. It is going to reach Pakistan today to attend the 8th session of the Intergovernmental Commission for Trade and Cooperation that is scheduled to take place between the 18th and the 20th of this month. The delegation comprises 80 members and will hold bilateral talks on the oil and LNG trade deal for a long-term basis. This is an important development. Let's see how it goes forward. Our last story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Malala Yousafzai. And of course, we know that she has backed Joyland, and of course, we all know that it has also been shortlisted for the best foreign film at the Oscars. Let's see if it comes to the final five. Nevertheless, there's also another film now. She has boarded another Oscar shortlisted film about a U.S. Marine's change of heart. Stranger at the Gate is the name of this short film. It tells the story of a U.S. Marine, Richard McKinney, who initially planned on bombing a mosque, but then instead converted to Islam. A very heartening story, an important story that needs to be highlighted. This is going to be our final story. Let's begin with our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the interview that our Premier Shehbaz Sharif Sahab gave to Al Arabiya very recently, in which he highlighted the relationship that Pakistan enjoys with the UAE, with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Qatar and other countries, and how they have been instrumental in taking Pakistan out of the current situation. Also, how he wants this relationship to be developed into a more strategic relationship. More in the following report.
Foreign policy is a serious business and rightly described as a country's first line of defense. Policy formulation and policy articulation both require careful thought and judgment. Under the incumbent PDM government, balanced and broad-based engagement with multilateral global institutions has always remained significant. Elucidating this vision in an effort to resolve pressing issues with New Delhi, including the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif asked his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi to hold serious and sincere talks. Speaking during an interview with Al Arabiya news channel, the Prime Minister apprised flagrant human rights violations in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and urged to stop persecution of minorities in India.
We want to live in peace with India, provided we are able to resolve our genuine problems. My message to the Indian leadership and Prime Minister Modi is that let's sit down on the table and have serious and sincere talks to resolve our burning issues. like Kashmir.
Speaking about his successful visit to the Gulf country, Premier Shehbaz Sharif emphasized that leadership of Pakistan and Gulf countries have resolved to cooperate with each other in the realm of trade and culture and project Islam as a religion of peace and shun all forms of terrorism. Pakistan, under coalition government, focused to enhance its relationship with the old friends and forge new ties with others. Pakistan chaired the G77 and succeeded in the inclusion of loss and damage fund in the COP27 agenda for the developing countries. The world reposed trust in Pakistan and pledged worth over $9 billion in flood aid at Geneva Moot, and it secured Pakistan $4 billion worth of finance from brotherly countries UAE and Saudi Arabia. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has hinted at increasing its investment in Pakistan to $10 billion. Pakistan, led by stellar leadership of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, capitalized on its diplomatic clout to garner crucial successes at the economic front.
I'll discuss this, the first part of this very important issue. We've been joined by Faheem Sardar Saab. He's a senior policy specialist and he belongs to the National Security Division at the Government of Pakistan. Faheem Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Pleasure to have you here after a very long time for our show. You've come to other shows. Let's begin with the achievements on the economic, on the diplomatic front that Pakistan has had. Some of those were highlighted in the interview that our Premier gave to the Al Arabiya channel very recently. Let's talk about the Geneva mood. Let's talk about COP27 and let's talk about how this current government highlighted the effects of climate change and how it brought about this global fund for all the developing countries, including Pakistan. How, in your point of view, has Pakistan's global presence amplified under the current government?
Thank you for having me. I think it's very important for us to understand that the government has been pushing very hard on these major issues. Let's start with climate, as you mentioned. We have been supported very aggressively, very heavily, very assiduously by the United Nations. We have to keep that in mind. The United Nations felt the pain of what Pakistan had to go through in these floods. And the Secretary General of the United Nations, he said at the Geneva meet, he said that Pakistan contributes practically nothing to the global carbon emissions, and yet it is one of the most affected. So having said that, the government has been extremely persistent in reminding the world of its duty, of its obligation to helping countries that have been affected by their actions. We are at the forefront of a climate war, so to speak, against things like erosion, flooding, loss of life, loss of wealth. I mean, we are trying to predict what will happen in the next quarter. But anyway, the government has been successful in getting support from the international community. And although that's not exactly as much as what we lost, but still it's support nonetheless. That will, of course, help Pakistan kickstart the restructuring process. But we have to obviously link that with the economy. The economy, because I mean, it's much easier if you link everything with the economy, make it an economic act. And I think the government will definitely do that, turn it into an economic act. That sort of helps the multiplier kick in.
Let's talk of those countries who've been at the forefront of helping Pakistan when it needed help the most. Let's begin with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that has hinted at increasing the investment in Pakistan to 10 billion and has also retained the money that it had given in Pakistan. It has rolled over the amount that was present here. How much does that contribute, in your point of view, in strengthening the baseline of Pakistani economy?
Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, well, I mean, I think we need a conference to discuss the relationship because it's been a brotherly relationship ever since Pakistan was created.
But has the government strategy worked in your point of view?
I think it has. And more will be done as we move along, because Saudi Arabia is also going through a process of realization of who has helped Saudi in difficult times. They've had some tough situations come up. Pakistan has stood by them, and Saudi Arabia standing by Pakistan. Saudi Arabia's investments in Pakistan will yield double to triple digit returns, which is one of the highest on earth. We have to understand that it's not just going to be something that they give us or they're actually going to make money out of this. Let us go back to one of my former employers. It's Saudi Pak Investment Company. That was the first DFI made by Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Then you've got other DFIs. The DFI between Saudi and Pakistan has helped build projects in Pakistan. So if Saudi Arabia is going to increase its investments in Pakistan, it's actually doing not only us a favor, and it's not only helping our investment community, it's also helping itself. And this basically strengthens the relationships that we have, the relationship that we have enjoyed for a very long time.
All right. But it's not just the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Al Arabia, during the interview with the channel Al Arabia, our premier also highlighted how the UAE has stood by Pakistan, and how the UAE has again, given money to Pakistan as loan, and then of course the fact remains that there's a huge number of Pakistani expatriates working in the UAE as well, which consider the country as its second home. You talk about, we just highlight a little bit about the 10 billion investment in Pakistan and the UAE and the expatriate. How can Pakistan change all of this into an outcome that could be beneficial for all the partners concerned?
Well, I think if you make it more, and I'm sorry for flogging a dead horse, but if you make it more economic, if you make it economically beneficial for both sides.
Faheem Saab, we will be continuing with our conversation, but we have to go to a short break. Stay tuned.
Sure.
Welcome back, and we are discussing the impact of the interview that our Premier Shehbaz Sharif Saab gave to Al Arabia, and the different formalities and modalities that he discussed during the course of the interview. We are highlighting his relationship, his country's relationship with the Gulf countries, including the United Arab Emirates, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and other important countries, and how he wants to further bolster this relationship into a strategic one. We are in the studios with Faheem Sardar Saab. He's a senior policy specialist and economist, and he also belongs to the National Security Division at the Government of Pakistan. Faheem Saab, thank you very much and welcome back. Faheem Saab, we were discussing about the UAE, we were discussing about the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and how the loans that have been given, the investment that is probably coming from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia can be turned into an outcome that could be beneficial for all parties concerned.
Thank you. Again, it can become beneficial for all parties concerned when there is some economics attached to it. If the Saudis invest, if the Emiratis invest in Pakistan, it should give them some profit. And conversely, their investment helps the Pakistan economy. So trying to really come down to the molecular level, we just have to keep it simple, and we have to ensure that their money comes in without too much of trouble, because there are some details that sometimes create issues, like hurdles and red tapeism at times.
Bottlenecks.
Yes, and that can be catered for, to be honest. It's been catered for in the past as well. It's nothing new. But we just have to ensure that we're able to talk to them, we're able to bring them into their interested sectors. By the way, the Board of Investment has done a pretty good job of identifying which sectors have which opportunities. So it's not like we're just starting from scratch. Actually, we've already done the homework. We just need to sort of help them ease them in to the various sectors that they're interested in. But having said that, it has to be beneficial for everyone. It has to be a win-win situation for everyone, and that will be when it turns into a profit. And
you say it needs to be turned into a profit, but looking at the current diplomatic arena and how Pakistan has been successfully campaigning for its country's cause, whether it be in the Gulf countries, whether it be in other different formats, whether it be at the Geneva mood, whether it be at COP27, do you feel that the coalition government is properly capitalizing on Pakistan's diplomatic capital in order to navigate the economic challenges that it is confronted with?
I think so, because the government is, as I said earlier, very aggressively and persistently pursuing these aspects. There are issues. We've just come out of a flood, a horrible flood, as it was referred to as by the Secretary General, as it was called, I think, monsoon on steroids or something like that. We've just come out of a really.
We're still not really out of it. We still have a lot of people who are still affected by this.
I stand corrected. So the point is that we've been reeling from that problem, but that does not mean we're not able to recover. We just need that, what's called as bridge financing right now. So this investment, these loans, will help us bridge finance what we were doing earlier, because the economy had picked up earlier. Had it not been for the floods, we would have been actually moving in a pretty in a decent way towards more growth. but we've had some force majeure issues that caused this delay. The government has pushed very hard to make the global community understand what Pakistan needs and what their responsibility is. Pakistan has been extremely firm on this issue. That's the main point.
All right. Faheem, also what I'd like to understand is there was a lot of talk about Charter of Economy, of all the stakeholders coming together as one to put Pakistan out of the current crisis. Despite the negative reaction that has come from the current opposition, do you feel a time could come when all the parties concerned could come together on one front in order to help Pakistan strengthen itself economically?
No, I think that's a very important question. I've had the privilege of working on the Charter of Economy with the National Security Division. So I've created a basic understanding of that. The answer to your question is an emphatic yes, because it's becoming inevitable. It should have been done perhaps some time ago, but let bygones be bygones. Everyone is ready to now converge to this point. Right now, yes, we've got some internal stuff, political aspects coming here and going there. But the bottom line is the whole country is in agreement to a strategic point. We've done this in the past, that we've built projects when we decided that it was strategically important for the country. Whenever we take that decision, which I think we are about to take that decision, it will be done.
Thank you so very much, Faheem Sardar, Economist, Senior Policy Specialist at the National Security Division at the Government of Pakistan, to have highlighted the different aspects of how Pakistan is moving forward in order to strengthen itself economically, and how the relationship with the Gulf countries, as has been enunciated by a premier while talking to Al Arabia, is a very important a point, or a very important point in that very direction to help Pakistan come out of its crisis and strengthen itself. Let's hope the coming weeks and months prove to be very beneficial for Pakistan economically. Thank you very much, Faheem Sardar.
Thank you.
We'll be back, but after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome to Newsroom, and in our second segment we are going to discuss the relationship that Pakistan has as far as India is concerned, and the need for both countries to sit down for talks and of course discuss all the thorny issues that include the issue of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and of course the decisions that have been taken on the 5th of August 2019. Our Premier, replying to a question about Pakistan's relations with India, he said India is a neighbouring country of Pakistan and we want to live in peace with India. He also impressed upon the leadership, particularly Narendra Modi, to sit down and have sincere and serious talks to resolve all our burning issues, including the core issue of Jammu and Kashmir, and reverse the decision taken on the 5th of August 2019. To discuss all of that in the current context of what is happening in India and of course the Muslim minority especially, and there are so many incidents that are happening even of late, we've been joined by Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal Saab. He's an expert in international relations. Dr. Saab, it's a pleasure to have you here in the studios after a very long time, so welcome to Newsroom.
Thank you.
Our Premier Shehbaz Sharif Saab calls for serious and sincere talks between Pakistan and India. This is not the first time that Pakistan has asked for talks with India, but India has never reacted the way it has. Nevertheless, this part of the interview has been highlighted by the Indian media in whichever capacity it has, but it has been highlighted a lot compared to other interviews. Do you feel there is some kind of a prospect of a constructive dialogue between Pakistan and India in the future?
Let me answer your questions in two sections. First is that why it is highlighted in India, because they only picked that part of the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's interview in which he was saying that Pakistan is prepared for a dialogue, and at the same time he referred that the dialogue is imperative for peaceful coexistence. He also said that Pakistan is open for the solutions of all kind of dispute through the dialogue. Now, the impression which they were generating in their media, the impression is that Pakistan is begging, or Pakistan's Prime Minister is deviating from the principal stance on Kashmir, and he's more interested in dialogue. Then, if you see the second part of the interview, in that and later on the Foreign Office Prime Minister Office categorically
took out a statement.
Took out very clearly, and they showed. And I have seen that Prime Minister's interview with the Arab Channel. In that interview, Prime Minister was saying that Pakistan is ready for a dialogue provided you have to reverse all kind of the steps which were taken on 5th August 2019 and aftermath. Now, it's a very clear stance of Pakistan that if you restore Kashmir, address the minorities issues there, and then move for a dialogue. So Pakistan's Prime Minister's stance is very much there, and it's a very any civilized nation which wants to live in a region of peace, it is make the similar stance. Second is, I think that situation is not ripe for a dialogue.
All right.
Because Pakistan is in a political processing. In the next 6-7 months, we will be having elections. And in Pakistan, all the strategic issues are debated like our, you can say, household issues. So our political elite, whether it's in the government or in the, you can say, opposition, they do not refrain in alleging or criticizing the other and cherry picking to establish their point. This is our domestic situation. Second is, more than that, on Kashmir issue, I think all the political parties in Pakistan have a consensus, and if you see PTI, if you see PMLN, if you see other parties of People's Party, you will find the same language, same stance, same thing. But now on the other side, which I am very much clear that the situation is not right, because Hindutva forces popularity is based on their, you can say, narrative of victimhood. Victimhood of centuries, they say, because of the Muslims. And they are mustering the Hindutva forces, BJP is mustering the Hindutva forces political support by narrating this, by alleging Pakistan, and by showing Pakistan is a big threat. And Prime Minister Modi is now looking, and if he is not his successor, Amit Shah, of 2024 spring election, general election. Before that, they will not be prepared. And second is, normally, dialogue, when the Americans used to play, when they had their interest here because of Afghanistan, they bring both states there, and they were a good mediator. In this context, if we look towards the UAE has not that kind of a leverage on India, or especially with the Modi, who is a politician whose survival is based on his majority. Why he lose the majority? Finally,
because he has been churning this majority on the basis of anti-Pakistan propaganda.
Anti-Pakistan and anti-narrative of victimhood of the Hindu community, which they created in the last, this narrative which they built in the last 100 years, especially from 1982 onward. So by this way, they are not prepared. Finally, yes, we are 2 nuclear armed states. A dialogue between the nuclear armed states is imperative for both states' survival. If they are not going for this dialogue, then both states are in a, what you call it, in a crisis or in a strategic instability situation, which is alarming, which is dangerous. Any mishap can lead to a disaster.
Dr. Saab, do you feel there's some kind of a foreign policy debate in India vis-a-vis Pakistan and vis-a-vis some kind of a solution to these thorny issues between India and Pakistan? If not in the short term, then in the long term. Is there any kind of a leeway of a discussion or a prospect of such a policy debate?
India is a vibrant society. Within India, we have seen that there is and I personally visited a number of times in these academic discourses or dialogues. Indian society is vibrant. There is a rational voice in India. But in the last since 2014 and especially after 2019, this rational voices, you can say, impact has gradually decreased. Still there is a voice, and there is a strong voice that there is a need for a dialogue. There is need to settle the issues on the table. There is needs the people in India thinks that the prosperity of India is linked with the peace in South Asia, the connectivity in South Asia, and like SAARC viability. There is but unfortunately, the voice is very much limited, and with the passage of time, overshadowed by the Hindutva forces. Sooner or later, that voice will gain a momentum, because when the things they start realizing where they are heading.
But the fact remains, Dr. Saab, that policy of Narendra Modi based on Hindutva policies or RSS ideology has really worked in his favor. We've seen he has garnered the election votes twice. He has become Prime Minister twice, and now, as you yourself said, the elections are again to be held in 2024. So he's also looking in that direction. And as you also enunciated that there's going to be no change whatsoever till the elections happen, and as a result, maybe there might be some change after 2024. This said, when you look at the policy, and first of all, I'd like to refer to what the Prime Minister's office said, and they said there is going to be no discussion until there is an action taken by India to reverse the action that it took on the 5th of August 2019. Will that ever happen? This is the first part of my question. The second part of my question pertains to all the atrocity on the Muslims in Indian Hill Valley and otherwise. We are just receiving information on not only the Kashmiri youth that are being killed in fake encounters, and again there were 2 who were killed in a fake encounter in Budgam, but also the fact that people are now being taken out of their houses, and their properties being confiscated, and madrasas are being demolished in Gujarat. 6 madrasas have happened, and then there are old mosques that are also being demolished in the name of widening roads. With these policies, can there be any kind of constructive talks or a prospect of talks between 2 countries?
I think that why we are the situation which you have portrayed and the way Saffron Brigade is working there, and the Modi's, this you can say narrating his, on the one side is beating his chest, and on the other side he is trying to establish. Modi is working on the similar agenda, what we call it Indira Doctrine, or in Americans' policy, foreign policy, you find it Monroe Doctrine. But he fails to realize Pakistan is a very strong state, militarily capable state, though we have internal or domestic challenges, but we are a state which have been facing, we are living in a war zone since last 42, 43 years, and still we are able to check, and we checked India very daily in what you call it on 27th February 2019. I think after that Indians will not think for a military adventurism, but you cannot rule out from these kind of ideologues or you can say staunch or radicalized people, because they are radicalized people in that context, and radicalize anyone, whether it's religiously, and they are religiously radicalized, or ism-wise radicalized, they are always dangerous. But anyway, coming back to your point, if you see, we are a legitimate part of Kashmir conflict legally under the United Nations Security Council. So even if we try to distance, even if we try to ignore our being a part of it, it is not set aside. When we are a part of it, how we can leave it aside? This is number one, which the Indians desire, I mean the BJP government desires. Second is, as a human being, not only Muslim, think as a human being, what is happening with the minorities in India, including Muslims,
Dalits, Sikhs, Christians.
Are as a human beings, it's not our responsibility to talk about them, to raise our voice and do whatever possible diplomatically, politically to guard them, not only us. And I'm sorry to say, the Western nations are talking about the girls' education in Afghanistan. Why they are not talking about the butchering of the Muslims or genocide of the Muslims in India? This is what you call it, a dualism. This is some kind of hypocrisy. But if you see in 2005, there was a United Nations passed, though it's not a part of it, responsibility to act. Under the responsibility to act, the NATO forces operated, giving that under the humanitarian in Libya, a viable state, they destroyed. Why they are not coming and checking the Modi? Why India has a big belly for their dumping of their businesses? I think that Pakistan's stance on that, on the minorities of the Indians in India, and especially Muslims. What the Indian government is doing with the Muslims, Pakistan's stance is legally correct, politically on the right correct, and morally it is essential.
All right, Dr. Saab, also you talked about military adventurism. I'd like to refer to reports that say that India has approved the purchase of 120 Pralay missiles to deploy them across the country's borders with China and with Pakistan. Doesn't that increase that military adventurism that you've just so highlighted in the previous question?
The problem is that the international community, and especially Americans, since 92 I always trace, but since 2005, when they start looking in as a real the strategic partner, which is and this partnership, though in writing they say it's partnership, but it is gradually you can say changing into a strategic ally. They have been ignoring and they are buying this Indians argument that India's China military posture need these things. But the problem with us is that India says it has a two-front challenge, but India's entire military build-up is not two-front. This missile which you have said, it's 150 kilometer range. It's a version of Prithvi 1. 150 kilometer range in Himalayas, what it will give them advantage? Either its range could be 110, 150, 50, 60, 70 as a tactical weapon, battlefield weapon like Nasr, then it makes a sense.
All right.
But if it is a more than 150 kilometer, it's against you. It will be going to have a strategic impact vis-a-vis Pakistan because of our geographical contiguity and our major cities near the border. So these all weapons which they built, 80 to 90%, their deployment, their military exercises, their everything is towards Pakistan. So if somebody is thinking, or if they say, okay, we have built these weapons, 100, we are going to deploy on that, but these small portable arms, they can move within a 24 hours from northwestern side to the northeastern, from the north southern or from the northeastern side to from the northwestern side, which is our side. So we cannot rule out military adventurism. We cannot rule out false flag in the next in this year. And why I'm saying the trends indicate of 2016, follow up 2019. It's interesting, and here sometimes I feel what has happened with the Indian community, common man in India, that you lost 2 aircrafts, your submarine was lost when it was identified, your army deployed BrahMos and then immediately went for redeployed. Militarily you were checkmated in a manner that your 50 years conventional superiority was completely shattered, and still you are voting for a Modi who is saying, I am a chowkidar. So it's their media, the way how they make him or presented him, that he can only protect India. We are not aggressor. Pakistan has never made like this, but they are presenting, and that's the reason I'm saying that if he enter in a dialogue on an equality basis, he will be going to cost the 2024 general election. But that's why he has to maintain this temperature. Yes, sometimes I read in the newspaper stories, Modi was coming to Pakistan. He will be, is last since 2014. He came to Lahore, he met in Ufa, and Paris to our former Prime Minister there, and then Prime Minister of Pakistan. He took 1 step forward, 2 steps backward. This is his strategy.
All right.
So engaging Modi, look, this Prime Minister gave a positive gesture that yes, dialogue is imperative. We can address the situation. You can improve the situation. We are open for and the way the media is presenting, like India is a mighty power, that India is going
that we've coded down some
and Pakistani Prime Minister is begging for a dialogue. No, that's not. So this is Indians have to realize.
I think the realization will come, and it is also the responsibility of Pakistani media to highlight that if the Indian media is hell-bent on portraying Pakistan in a certain manner and highlighting their premier in a totally different manner than what he needs to be, Pakistan's media also needs to be responsible enough to highlight what Pakistan's perspective is as far as this whole situation is concerned, and Pakistan's demand to sit down for sincere talks as far as, resolving all the thorny issues, and also for India to revert back all the decisions that it took on the 5th of August 2019. A very difficult step, and I understand that it might not happen in the near future, but let's see. Yes.
Media, I can add, unfortunately, despite having 70 plus channels in Pakistan, this kind of the issue, and this is real issue of the Pakistan, not US.
It's not highlighted as much as it needs to be.
Except this channel, maybe on the other channels they have only in a negatively criticized manner, not objectively debated today.
That is so true, and that debate needs to be done more often and more aggressively by Pakistan as well.
Not aggressively, objectively, I can say.
Objectively, and that is also very important. But when you see Amit Shah saying in public rallies that Muslims in India have committed land jihad by occupying spaces that were meant for Hindus, and the mass demolition of 4,000 houses in Uttarakhand, evictions in Barpeta, Lakhimpur, IIOJK are all, more or less inspired by this mentality. How can you move forward until and unless India understands what it is doing towards its minorities, whether it be Muslims, Dalits, Christians or Sikhs, is wrong on so many levels. First and foremost on the humanitarian level, and needs to understand that every person, irrespective of race, creed or religion, has a right, and that needs to be respected for a country that it calls itself the largest democracy in the world.
Is it a democracy?
And also, well, theocracy in my point of view, but democracy is what they say, and a pluralistic country. Wow. That was what was highlighted very recently by Narendra Modi sahab at the G20 conference. He said, we are a pluralistic society. Well, that is something that we'll be debating.
It's a pluralistic society, but at the same time, it is dominated by one sect.
That is so true. That is so true. Thank you very much, Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal Sahab, International Affairs expert, to have joined us and to have come all the way to the studios. It's a pleasure, and I hope we'll be seeing more of you in the coming days as well. Thank you so very much, sir. Let's come to our last two stories. The first concerns this delegation that is coming from Russia today for the oil talks. A high-level delegation that is headed by the country's Minister for Energy is reaching Pakistan today. It's an 80-member delegation. They are going to discuss all important issues, including oil and the LNG and the trade deal for a long-term basis. Much touted flagship 3 billion Pakistan stream gas pipeline project as well. It's going to be a 3-day visit of this Russian delegation to Pakistan, and of course these talks are important in the current context of all the challenges that Pakistan is confronted with. Let's see how all of this bodes along. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we'll come to Malala Yousafzai. We know that she backed the film Joyland, that is more or less shortlisted for the Oscar for Best Foreign Film category. We'll know in a couple of days whether it is in the top 5 or not. Nevertheless, it is in the shortlist till now. She has also joined another film, Stranger at the Gate, that talks about a US Marine, Richard McMckinney, who initially planned to bomb a mosque, but then instead converted to Islam. This documentary, to which in fact Malala Yousafzai has associated herself, has won several accolades at multiple film festivals. McKinney suffers from PTSD, and he set out to explore the mosque in his hometown of Muncie in Indiana. But when he started to frequently visit the mosque and gather information about it, he was impressed not only by the kindness but also the way people reacted to him, and thus he converted to Islam. And now he is the president of the said mosque. A whole change of attitude, and you know, it is the kindness of people that makes you change as a person, that makes you change as a professional, and also this is what our religion teaches us, to be kind to people. With that, we come to an end of today's Newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.